my pet theory is that Starmer will survive because of the cliche, which is that Labour are very, very bad at killing their own leaders, unlike the Tories, Michael. Can you tell us a bit about that?
I now want to introduce our star Spectator writers. And here they are. Our political correspondent, James Heale. Our deputy editor, Freddy Gray. Our parliamentary sketch writer columnist and assistant editor, Madeline Grant. And our political editor, Tim Shipman. And we'll begin with James. James, do you want to tell us about your political moment of the year?
So my political moment of the year, I think, was probably the most important in terms of UK politics. There's also a bit of levity as well involved in it, which was the summer welfare revolt, in which suddenly, after about a year or so of being elected, a lot of Labour MPs, in the words of one government aide I spoke to, started thinking for themselves, and they started deciding they weren't too keen on all these welfare cuts. And there were 5 billion proposed in the Universal Credit Bill. And suddenly, all of a sudden, sort of the Viet Cong, 126 of them, had signed this so-called reasoned amendment, which would have killed that bill stone dead. As a result, there were all these kind of late-night discussions, the Labour Party turning on itself. And it was therefore, as a result of that, they had to pull the cuts. And so because of that, we now have a government which is sort of governing very much in coalition with its backbenchers, which it's very much despised over the past 5 years of the summer project. And I think the ramifications are going to still play out, where we are seeing on things like the proposals about juries, people still going out and attacking the new chief whip, Johnny Reynolds, for not being like the old one, Alan Campbell, who was axed as a result of these. So I think that in terms of the refashioning of the balance of power between the Prime Minister and his backbenchers and what it means for things like the government and its fiscal market position, the summer welfare revolt was one that had its moments of levity, but also has serious ramifications for this government.
James Heale, deputy political editor. It is the welfare revolt that was his political moment of the year. And now over to the deputy editor of the magazine overall and editor of our US edition, Freddy Gray. Freddy.
Yes, mine is a slightly odd one, I realise, particularly with the sort of Christmas, the Yuletide sentiment going on. I was hoping someone might flash it up on the screen, but maybe, could that happen? Is that going to happen?
The image?
The image? No?
Alas.
I'll have to describe it. This is going very badly. My moment of the year was, as I say, it is a bit odd, but I love moments where politicians portray the deep madness that they hold within their minds. And so my moment of the year was in February. Benjamin Netanyahu went to Washington. It was just after Donald Trump, equally mad, had said that he wanted to make Gaza the Riviera of the Middle East. And Benjamin Netanyahu gave him a golden pager with a sort of olive tree background, olive tree mount. And the golden pager said, "Press with both hands." And then it was to Donald Trump, the greatest president, and blah, blah, blah. And what I found so extraordinary about that is the sort of tastelessness of it, firstly. I mean, this was obviously a very successful operation. You know, nobody's going to mourn the Hezbollah leaders that were killed. They were terrible people. But there was, a child was killed in it or something. 2 children, in fact. And you think, this is what Benjamin Netanyahu wants to give to Donald Trump as a sort of gesture of love. And the funniest part of it was some of the Trump people thought it was a threat. They thought that Netanyahu was saying that he was going to take out Trump unless he did what he was going to do. And my final point in it is the best bit is in return, Netanyahu just got a signed picture from Donald Trump saying, "You're a great leader." So the handing over the pager is my golden moment.
And Maddie, what was your political moment of the year?
Okay, if I'm honest, my political moment occurred approximately 8 minutes ago when I saw that someone had replied to the question about what gets brought to the Oval Office, Russian hooker. But I guess I'm not allowed to have that because I need a fuller explanation. My moment is probably the resignation and associated lamentations of Angela Rayner just, when was that, a few weeks ago, not long ago, a couple of months ago. Basically, the reason I loved it so much was that it paved the way for one of the great, completely graceless, non-apologies moments of anti-contrition that I've ever seen in the House of Commons since I've been a sketch writer. At no point did Rayner in her speech acknowledge any of the reasons why she had been sacked. It was all stuff about my socialist principles, and it's like, I don't think Marx and Engels wrote anything about having a holiday home in Sussex. So that in itself was brilliant, but also the number of people who had turned out from not just the Labour backbenchers to cheer her on, but also the big beasts, if you can call them that, of the Labour cabinet. You had Lammy there and Bridget Phillipson and Rachel Reeves in solidarity. And it was just underlined not only the innate hilarity of the apology, but for me also the weakness of Sakia's position, because what should have been a moment of a bit of introspection for her had actually become a potential new leadership rally for Rayner, which is what it really was. So it was a great bit of anti-contrition, a leadership bid dressed up as humble pie.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yes.
And Tim, your political moment of the year.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I hope you all got your fizzy cough mixture on the way in from the advert. I've only been served with red wine this evening. I would have perhaps gone with what James said, but going forth is more difficult. So I was concerned about doing this particular moment because it contains a little profanity, but after the Russian hooker and the suggestion that the bloke who shot Trump was actually a rent boy, I think you're in a reasonably robust form. So picture the scene, if you will. It's November the 17th in the House of Commons. The Home Secretary, Shibana Mahmood, has announced a series of tough rules on asylum. She's going to change the way refugee status works so you don't keep it permanently. Once your country is safe to return to, you must return to it. And up stands a chap called Max Wilkinson of the Liberal Democrats, the MP for Cheltenham, the kind of place that is only invaded once a year for the horse racing, and has little knowledge of outside encroachment. And he criticised Shibana Mahmood, saying that to claim the country, it's not helpful for the Home Secretary to claim that the country is being torn apart by immigration. Acknowledging the challenges facing our nation is one thing, but stoking division using immoderate language is quite another. Well, he got what was coming to him, because up stood the Home Secretary and said, I wish I had the privilege of walking around this country and not seeing the division that the issue of migration and the asylum system is creating across the country. Unlike him, unfortunately, I am the one who is regularly called a fucking packy and told to go back home. And on she went, my own experience, the system's broken, we all need to acknowledge that. And this, for me, was just a great indelible moment. Migration has been the big political issue of the year, and I think the reaction to this moment showed you how far that famous Overton window has moved. I think it's almost impossible, unless you're a member of the left wing of the Labour Party, to have a migration policy that is now too tough. 70% of Labour voters agree with Shibana Mahmood, 57% of Lib Dem voters agree with her, and 49% of the Green voters agree with her. Now, the MPs couldn't disagree more, but this shows that she has now captured the sort of what is the political common sense centre ground on this issue, and this moment completely said, I'm a woman of colour, I'm here doing this, and you, poncy southern idiot, don't have a clue what you're talking about. Compare that then with her leader, Keir Starmer, who tried and failed to make the same arguments earlier in the year, gave a tough speech, but he then claimed later he'd barely read it, he didn't like it very much, and he sort of disappeared. And this sense that Starmer has no sort of fundamental political views, no backbone. Along has come Mahmood and kind of drawn attention to that. She's trying to deal with hotels. She's now, I've been writing about politics for 25 years, and for that entire time I've been hearing that we should have 12 police forces in this country, and no one has tried to do anything about it until this week. She's going around the Home Office whispering in the ears of civil servants saying, it's Shabana-geddon. Good for her, we say. And that's about this year. But this political moment will also tell you about next year, because the big issue next year, at least after May, is going to be the leadership of the Prime Minister and whether he clings on to his job. Angela Rayner, Wes Streeting, Ed Miliband, we're all told are circulating and could take this position. Well, I say to you, if Shabana Mahmood gets this stuff right, put your cheeky £10 Christmas bet on her. Don't waste money on the Grand National. I don't know what the odds are at the moment. At the moment, she's a long shot. But when all this lot are getting the attention, if she gets on and achieves anything like what she's promised, then this is going to be a very interesting year in 2026 for Shabana Mahmood.
Thank
We shouldn't get on Betfair.
No.
Cool.
What are the odds?
I didn't realise it was a tip.
I think our tech wizards have now enabled the opportunity for all of you to vote, but you may well want to hold back, see how the discussion goes before plumping for a particular moment of the year. But from what Tim said, and it's striking that all the domestic political moments that have been chosen have been about Labour woes in different ways. From what Tim said, Tim's assumption, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong, Cheltenham, is that on balance, Starmer will probably go next year, and that there'll be a Labour leadership election, indeed a new Prime Minister, and Tim's given Shabana Mahmood not the endorsement, but certainly he's pointed out that she's probably underpriced in the betting markets at the moment. So I'm going to ask every member of the panel broadly what they think of Keir's chances of survival. Should he? Does he deserve to? Will he anyway? And who they think should or will take over from him within the Labour Party, if indeed there's anyone who stands out. And I'll begin with Maddie.
Well, I think if Starmer does go, then it'll probably be Rayner. I mean, I mentioned the resignation speech, which was basically reframed as a kind of "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina" kind of Eva Peron mourning ritual. I think that she could get such a turnout for her resignation. It shows the level of support, and I think that number of people showing up at that moment in the Commons was a bit of a rebuke to her boss for having sacked her. So I think in terms of parliamentary support, I've heard a fair bit about Ed Miliband possibly doing a run, which is quite terrifying, but he has said that he really doesn't want to have another go, and I know that they do often say that, but he's kind of said it repeatedly more than he needed to. So my assumption would be, barring some turnaround, Starmer kaput and Rayner comes in.
And James, what's your hunch?
Well, Sir Keir is obviously a very keen Remainer, so I'll give him odds of 48-52 in terms of survival. I think that Labour are on course to finish third, not just in Wales, but in Scotland too. And if that happens, it's going to be very difficult to see what can be done to turn that around, because you look around the world, you see that there's nothing really going to we're not going to rediscover North Sea oil as a thing which sort of helped bail out Thatcher. We're not going to have a Falklands for him to retake. The economy is sort of trundling along at 1% or thereabouts. And so I think that at that point, so many mistakes have been made so soon into this government that it may well be the case that someone like Rayner, who will be untainted being outside the cabinet, a bit like Boris Johnson was in 2019, I think is probably best place to succeed him.
Freddie?
Well, as the Westminster expert on the I mean, my pet theory is that Starmer will survive because of the cliche, which is that Labour are very, very bad at killing their own leaders, unlike the Tories, Michael. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I think he'll still be here this time next year, which is such a depressing thought. I'm sorry. But I think he will survive.
Yes. If he went, is there, who, and I would press you, who do you think might take over? Is there anyone who you would think would be tolerable or better, in broad terms, and anyone who you think would be even more terrifying who's in with a chance?
Within Labour?
Within Labour.
I think we find Starmer terrifying, just depressing.
Yeah.
I mean, Wes Streeting, I suppose. Still pretty grim, though.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah. But that's about as optimistic as I get.
Okay. I will use a traditional method of voting, which is everyone raising their hand. So I'll ask the members of this elite audience, hands up those of you who think Starmer will be out next year. So I think that's almost half, about 40% to half. And then we've had various sort of nominations here for people who should take over, or not necessarily should, might take over. No endorsement, merely prediction. So between Shabana Mahmood, Angela Rayner, and Wes Streeting, that's the choice I'll give you. Hands up those who think, well, of that trio, Shabana Mahmood.
Is this would like or will win?
Yeah, would like, actually. Would like, yeah. Those who think, well, of that trio, I'm voting for Angie.
Come on, guys, think of the sketch writers.
Great. And then those who think, well, actually, do you know what? Of those three, Wes Streeting is the best. Okay, that is interesting. I think that has Shabana winning on the first ballot, but a good showing by Wes and some fanatical Angela Rayner supporters out there.
They must be parliamentary sketch writers.
Yeah, certainly.